Think about the last time someone insulted you, cut you off in traffic, or questioned your worth. In that precise moment, did you own your mind, or did you hand the keys of your kingdom to a stranger? Most people live their entire lives as puppets, their strings pulled by the opinions, moods, and actions of others. We have been conditioned to believe that a quick reaction is a sign of strength, that firing back proves our power. But the psychological reality is far more sobering. Every time you react, you are submitting. You are admitting that someone else has the power to dictate your internal state. True power, the kind of power that bends reality and commands respect without saying a word, doesn't lie in the explosion. It lies in the silence before the storm. It is the ability to sit in the center of a hurricane and remain untouched. This is not about suppressing your feelings or becoming a robot. It is about reclaiming the gap between a stimulus and your response. In that gap lies your freedom. Imagine your mind is a vast, deep ocean. On the surface, there are waves, storms of anxiety, winds of provocation, and the debris of other people's insecurities. If you live on the surface, you are constantly tossed around, gasping for air, at the mercy of the weather. But if you sink deeper, into the stillness of the abyss, the storms above become nothing more than a distant flicker. The power of not reacting is the art of sinking. It is the realization that your energy is the most valuable currency you possess, and most people are trying to steal it for free. When you react, you are paying them. You are investing your life force into their drama. Ask yourself, is this person, this comment, or this minor inconvenience worth a piece of my soul? Because that is exactly what you are trading away. We live in a world designed to keep us in a state of perpetual reaction. Social media feeds, breaking news, and toxic workplace dynamics are all engineered to trigger your amygdala, the ancient primitive part of your brain that sees a snide remark as a life-threatening predator. When you stay in reaction mode, you are living in survival mode. You cannot build a legacy, nurture a relationship, or find inner peace while your brain is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline over things that won't matter in 5 days, let alone 5 years. Mastery begins the moment you realize that doing nothing is often the most aggressive move you can make. It creates a vacuum. It forces the other person to face themselves. While they're waiting for your anger to validate their own instability, your silence becomes a mirror reflecting their instability back at them. The wise mentor does not avoid conflict. They transcend it. They understand that most human behavior is not a reflection of you, but a confession of their own internal struggle. When someone screams at you, they aren't describing you. They are narrating their own pain, their own lack of control, and their own fear. Why would you take advice from a person who is drowning? Why would you let their frantic splashing pull you under? By choosing not to react, you are effectively saying, "I see your storm, but I refuse to let it enter my house." This is the foundation of emotional sovereignty. It is the quiet confidence of a mountain that does not need to prove its height to the clouds passing by. To master this, we must first deconstruct the anatomy of a reaction. It usually starts with a physical sensation, a tightening in the chest, a heat in the neck, a sudden sharpness in the mind. This is the hook. The world is constantly throwing hooks at you, hoping you'll bite. Once you bite, they have you. The secret is to observe the hook without touching it. View your emotions as visitors. An emotion arrives at your door, knocks loudly, and demands your attention. You can acknowledge the visitor. You can say, "I see that anger is here," or "I recognize that insecurity has arrived." But you are not obligated to invite them in for tea. You are the landlord, not the guest. When you stop identifying with the emotion, when you move from "I am angry" to "I am observing a feeling of anger," the emotion loses its grip. This shift in perspective changes everything. It turns a potential explosion into an academic observation. You become a scientist of your own consciousness. You start to see the patterns. You realize that your triggers are actually just unhealed parts of yourself asking for your attention. If a comment about your competence makes you fly into a rage, it's not because the comment is true, it's because a part of you is afraid it might be. The external world is simply a diagnostic tool for your internal growth. Therefore, the person who pushes your buttons is actually your greatest teacher. They are showing you exactly where you are not yet free. Instead of hating them for the trigger, you can almost thank them for pointing out the work that remains to be done. But let us be clear. Not reacting is not the same as being passive. Passivity comes from a place of fear. You don't react because you are afraid of the consequences. Non-reaction comes from a place of absolute strength. You don't react because you are in total control of your energy. It is a strategic choice. It is the difference between a leaf being blown by the wind and a hawk gliding through it. The hawk doesn't fight the wind. It uses the wind's energy to rise higher. When you remain calm in the face of chaos, you gain the clarity to see the move that no one else sees. You stop playing checkers and start playing chess. You begin to understand that the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest, and the quietest person is often the one holding all the cards. This journey into the self requires a radical level of honesty. We often react because we want to be right. We want to defend our ego, that fragile construction of who we think we are. But the ego is a bottomless pit. It can never be sufficiently defended. The more you feed it with reactions, the hungrier it gets. True self-worth doesn't need a defense. A lion doesn't turn around when a small dog barks. He knows he is a lion. The dog's barking doesn't change the lion's nature. When you are grounded in your own truth, the opinions of the misinformed become background noise. You stop seeking validation from people you wouldn't even go to for advice. This is where the true transformation begins, where the noise of the world fades and the voice of your own intuition starts to speak. As you cultivate this stillness, you will notice a strange phenomenon. People will start to treat you differently. They will sense an invisible boundary. They will realize that their usual tactics of manipulation or provocation no longer work on you. You become unmesswithable. This isn't because you've become cold, but because you've become solid. You have stopped being a reflection of their chaos and have started being a source of your own light. You become the person who can handle the crisis, the one who doesn't fold under pressure, the one who leads not by shouting, but by being the most stable presence in the room. This stability is infectious. It creates a space where others feel safe, where logic can prevail over impulse, and where real solutions can be found. However, the hardest battle isn't with the world. It's with the version of yourself that is addicted to the drama. We often get a hit of dopamine from being righteously indignant. We like the rush of the argument. We have to break the addiction to our own suffering. We have to decide that our peace is more important than our pride. This requires a daily practice of mindfulness, not just sitting on a cushion for 10 minutes, but being mindful in the heat of the moment. It's the breath you take when your boss is being unfair. It's the 3-second pause before you hit send on that angry email. It's the conscious decision to look at your phone and not let a notification ruin your morning. These small victories are the building blocks of a master's life. Consider the metaphor of the mirror. A mirror reflects whatever is in front of it, a beautiful flower or a pile of trash, but the mirror itself remains untainted. It doesn't become the trash, and it doesn't try to hold on to the flower. It simply observes. When you achieve this state of being, you realize that your internal world is your sanctuary. You can observe the chaos of the world without letting it stain your spirit. You begin to walk through life with a sense of lightness because you are no longer carrying the weight of everyone else's baggage. You are free to move, free to create, and free to love because your heart is no longer under siege. This is the path of the emotional warrior. It is a path of discipline, of deep psychological insight, and ultimately of profound liberation. Every moment is a new opportunity to practice. Every interaction is a test of your resolve. And as you lean into this practice, you will find that the world hasn't changed, but you have. And because you have changed, the world no longer has the same power over you. This liberation is not a destination, but a relentless process of shedding the skin of your old self. You must understand that your reactions are often nothing more than ghosts, echoes of past traumas and childhood defenses that no longer serve the person you are becoming. When you feel that familiar surge of heat, that desperate need to justify yourself, you are looking at a map of your own wounds. The person standing before you didn't create the wound, they simply bumped into it. If you react, you are bleeding on someone who didn't cut you. But if you hold your ground, you begin the process of cauterizing that wound with the fire of your own awareness. This is where the work gets uncomfortable, because it requires you to stop blaming the world for your turbulence and start taking radical responsibility for your own equilibrium. Imagine you are sitting in a movie theater, watching a film of your own life. On the screen, a character who looks like you is being insulted or challenged. You see the character's face flush. You see their fists clench. As the audience member, you can see the situation objectively. You can see that the person insulting the character is just projecting their own misery. You don't feel the need to jump into the screen and fight. You simply watch. This is the state of mind you must cultivate in real time. When a situation arises, step back into the theater of your mind. Observe the you that wants to react. Watch the impulse rise like a wave, and then watch it break and recede. If you can stay in the seat of the observer for just 10 seconds, the chemical spike in your brain will begin to dissipate. This is the physiological truth. An emotional trigger lasts only about 90 seconds. From the moment the chemicals are released in your brain to the moment they are completely flushed out of your bloodstream, it takes a minute and a half. Anything you feel after that is a choice. If you are still angry 10 minutes later, or 2 hours later, or 3 days later, it's because you are looping the thought in your mind, re-triggering the chemical process over and over again. You are keeping the fire alive by throwing more wood on the flame. The power of not reacting is simply the discipline to let those 90 seconds pass without adding fuel to the flame. It is the ultimate act of self-love to refuse to poison your own body with stress hormones just because someone else is acting out of alignment. The wise mentor sits by the river. He doesn't try to stop the water from flowing. He knows that is impossible. Instead, he simply watches the logs, the leaves, and the debris float by. He knows that if he jumps into the river to catch every piece of trash, he will eventually drown. Most people are drowning in the river of their own impulses. They are exhausted, not because life is hard, but because they are fighting the current of every minor event. You must learn to let the river flow. Let the insults float by. Let the setbacks drift away. Your job is to stay on the bank, grounded in the earth, breathing in the air of the present moment. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much about your purpose to let it be derailed by things that are beneath your destiny. There is a profound psychological weight to the pause. Between the stimulus and the response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This pause is the mark of a sophisticated mind. It is where you decide if you are going to be a victim of your biology or a master of your psychology. When you pause, you are giving your prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic and reason, a chance to catch up with your emotional centers. You are allowing yourself to ask, what is the most effective version of me in this moment? Sometimes the most effective version is one that speaks with firm, calm boundaries. Sometimes it is the version that walks away. Sometimes it is the version that responds with a smile because the situation is truly beneath notice. This level of control creates a magnetic aura. Have you ever noticed that the most powerful people in any room are rarely the ones doing the most talking? They possess a weightiness. Their energy is concentrated, not scattered. When you react to everything, your energy is thin and frantic. It leaks out of you like water from a cracked jar. When you hold your center, your energy stays within you, building a reservoir of presence. People can feel that presence. They can feel that you are not easily moved. This makes your words, when you do choose to speak, carry 10 times the weight. Your silence gives your speech its power. Your stillness gives your action its impact. You become like a grand piano, capable of immense volume and complexity, but perfectly silent until the master decides it is time to play. Consider the nature of an ego clash. Two people are screaming, both trying to prove they are more than the other. But what are they actually defending? They are defending an image, a shadow. When you stop reacting, you are essentially saying, I have no image to defend. I know who I am. This is the ultimate threat to the ego of another. They want you to fight because a fight validates their importance. If you don't fight, you are indirectly telling them that their provocation isn't strong enough to move you. You are showing them that you are anchored in something deeper than their opinion. This isn't about being smug or superior. It's about being certain. It is the certainty of the sun, which doesn't need to argue with the night to prove that it will rise. As you go deeper into this philosophy, you will realize that not reacting is the highest form of intelligence. It is the recognition that the world is a mirror of your internal state. If you react with chaos, you invite more chaos. If you respond with stillness, you command stillness. You are literally training the world how to treat you. You are setting the terms of your existence. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start being the architect of your environment. You realize that you cannot control what people say, but you have absolute 100% control over what you do with what they say. This realization is the moment the cage door opens. You have always had the key. You just had to stop gripping the bars of the cage so tightly. This journey requires you to be comfortable with being misunderstood. When you don't react, people will call you cold or arrogant or weak. They will try to pull you back down into the mud with them because your height makes them feel small. You must be willing to let them be wrong about you. Their misunderstanding of your silence is not your problem to solve. In fact, their discomfort is a sign that you are winning the battle for your own soul. You are no longer living for the like or the approval or the nod of agreement. You are living for the quiet satisfaction of knowing that even in the middle of a storm, you were the captain of your own ship. You were the one who decided which way the sails would turn. You were the one who stayed at the helm while everyone else was running for the lifeboats. This mastery of the self eventually leads to a place of profound emotional invincibility. You begin to understand that peace is not the absence of noise, but the ability to remain unaffected by it. When you reach this stage, you no longer look at a difficult person or a high-pressure situation as a threat. You look at it as a gym. Each provocation is a heavy weight, and every time you choose not to react, you are performing a repetition that builds your psychological muscle. You start to crave the challenges because you know that a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. You become the sailor who welcomes the storm, not out of recklessness, but because you have total confidence in your vessel. You have tested your hull, you have reinforced your mast, and you know that your internal compass is true. The final layer of this transformation is the realization that your non-reaction is actually an act of deep compassion, not just for yourself, but for the world. When you refuse to reflect back the anger of another person, you stop the cycle of pain. You become a circuit breaker in the electrical grid of human trauma. If someone throws fire at you and you throw it back, the world gets hotter. But if someone throws fire at you and you meet it with the coolness of your own presence, the fire dies with you. You have the power to end generations of reactive behavior in your family line. You have the power to change the culture of your workplace. You become a source of cooling energy in a world that is burning with impulse and outrage. This is the highest calling of a conscious human being, to be the point where the chaos stops. Do not be discouraged if you fail. There will be days when the hook is too sharp, when the wound is too deep, and you will react. You will snap, you will defend, you will bleed. In those moments, do not punish yourself. Do not let your reaction to your reaction become another cycle of drama. Simply observe the failure. Say to yourself, I see that I lost my center today. I see what triggered me. And then return to the bank of the river. The path to stillness is not a straight line. It is a constant recalibration. Even the most seasoned masters are simply people who have learned to return to their center faster than everyone else. The goal is not perfection. The goal is presence. The goal is to shorten the time between the slip and the recovery. As we reach the conclusion of this journey, look back at the person you were before you understood the power of the gap. That person was a slave to every passing breeze. That person was exhausted by the constant need to be right, to be seen, and to be defended. Now imagine the person you are becoming, a person who moves through the world with a quiet, lethal brace. You are the eye of the storm. You are the mountain. You are the mirror that reflects but is never stained. You have realized that the greatest flex of power is not the ability to crush an opponent, but the ability to remain unmoved by them. Your energy is now yours. Your time is now yours. Your life is finally, truly your own. In the end, the power of not reacting is the power of self-governance. It is the ultimate declaration of independence from the whims of the external world. You have learned that while you cannot control the wind, you can absolutely control your sails. You have learned that your worth is not a debate, but a fact. And you have learned that the most powerful thing you can ever do when the world tries to provoke you, when it tries to pull you into the mud, when it tries to steal your peace, is to simply breathe, look it in the eye, and do absolutely nothing. Because in that nothingness, you have everything. You have your dignity, you have your strength, and above all, you have your freedom. The journey into the next chapter of your life begins now, not with a shout, but with the profound, life-changing power of your own silence.